In today's video, we're going to talk about how to get the longest shelf life out of nuts and seeds. Hey Profit and Preppers, I'm Kylene, and today I'm going to take you into my kitchen and I'm going to show you how I extend the shelf life out of nuts and seeds. Now, first of all, we need to start by saying that nuts and seeds, well, okay, wheat is a seed and it is a long-term, it has a long-term shelf life, but most seeds like these chia seeds, they're not a long-term storage item. Nuts are not a long-term storage item, but by doing a couple simple things, we can actually extend the shelf life of the nuts and seeds longer. So you're not gonna get 30 years, but you just might get 5. So in this video, we'll go through that. Let's look at this package of pecans. So do you notice how the package is kind of puffy? It's because most nuts and seeds are packaged with a nitrogen flush. Now, nitrogen is what the majority of air is made out of, right? It's about 79% nitrogen and I think 21 oxygen. And the nitrogen won't hurt the nuts at all. It's only the oxygen that causes the nuts or the seeds to oxidize and reduces that shelf life. So by flushing this with nitrogen, they're able to kind of help this package stay a little bit puffy so that the nuts don't break as easily, and they'll last longer in this package because of that. This is a jar of dry roasted peanuts. And you'll notice this lid. Have you ever noticed that once you open it, once you break this lid, this seal, suddenly the nuts don't stay good as long. It can be on your shelf for several months and be fine, but then you open it and then they go bad faster. It's because there's nitrogen in here, right? Dry roasted peanuts or any kind of roasted peanuts are not going to store as long as raw nuts will. So think about that when you're storing things. I personally would just leave this on the shelf because it's got nitrogen in it already and it's not going to have a long shelf life. And so for me, this is just fine to store it just like that. But these will store longer. So I think sometimes it's worth it to get a little bit of extra time by repackaging them. Now, usually I buy my chia seeds in containers like this. And I went to the store the other day to get some because I was running low. And all they had were the bulk chia seeds. So that means that I have to repackage them. Now there's 2 ways to repackage nuts and seeds. Well, actually there's more than that. You can get totally creative, but 2 main methods that will extend the shelf life. These are sunflower seeds that we had repackaged. We purchased them in bulk and we put them in mason jars back in 2021. Now, this particular one was preserved in the freeze dryer. So what you do is if you have a freeze dryer, you take that tray out, you turn one of the sheets upside down, and then you just set the lid on, and you don't want the ring on tight at all. You just want it super, super loose, just like that. You put these in there and then you push the buttons, and within just a couple minutes, everything is vacuum sealed.
So you can see that it drew a good vacuum because this door will not budge. So we're going to open the valve here to release the vacuum. And now the door will open up. These 10 jars have now been vacuum sealed. You can see that that lid is on there. It's been sucked down. It is good and tight.
The other thing that's really important is it needs to be in a cool. The colder that you keep this, the longer the shelf life. Some people store it in the freezer. I don't have a lot of freezer space, and so I just keep it in my basement storeroom, which is cooler. Just find the coolest place that you can store it, and that will extend the shelf life too. If all you have is your kitchen pantry, that's okay. Put it in your kitchen pantry. Now, the other thing that you can do is a food saver. You can get one of the mason jar attachments. There's a special attachment, and what you do with that is you just fill it up, set the lid on top, and you put the attachment on it, and then push the buttons and it will seal this. And you can tell when it's sealed because this sucks down and the lid won't come off. And then I just set this in the storage. That means that I don't really need any outside anything to seal it. But, okay, my favorite way, seriously, is oxygen absorbers, if I have oxygen absorbers. These are pumpkin seeds, and I just barely filled this one. But this is a 300 cc oxygen absorber. If I had 400 or 500, I would have used those. What I do is anything a gallon or less, you can use 300, 400, 500, it doesn't really matter, but I like to use up whatever I have so that I don't have a bunch of different sizes open. So that's what I do. But now these, in a little while, this lid will suck down because of the oxygen absorber, as long as it's nice and tight on here. And that's a great way to store them. Now, I like the mason jars because I can just repurpose them all the time, right? I have a big pantry downstairs where I've got a lot of bottled goods that we can every year. Now, with this mason jar, I reuse this lid. I would never reuse the lid for wet pack, but for dry pack, something like this, I would absolutely reuse this lid because I think that they're safe and they can be used several times and still work. Now, I never heat. You notice there's no heat being used in this because the heat will degrade the nuts and the seeds and make them go rancid faster. So don't stick them in the oven or anything like that. Oh, and if you're worried about bugs, if you're vacuum sealing something, you create an environment where bugs can't survive, their eggs can't survive. Same thing with the oxygen absorber. Bugs can't survive. Now I'm doing something a little bit special today. So for my survival kit, I am making special bags so that I can put these in there. You could put all kinds of different things in your survival kit, but for me, it's really important that I have the foods that I normally eat. And because I have MS, I eat a special diet and I eat a lot of nuts and seeds. So there's an oxygen absorber in here. And what that's gonna do is it's really gonna help extend the shelf life. Now, there's this zip seal on this, which means that I can use this over and over again. And that's one of the advantages that I see. Now, I don't usually put food storage in the ones with the clear front. And the reason why is because it will have a shorter shelf life than if it's full Mylar. It's just going to, because the oxygen is permeable, or the plastic is permeable and will allow for the slow transmission of oxygen over time. But because I'm planning to rotate this, right? I want the food in my kit to be fresh. So I'm not gonna leave this in there longer than a couple of years tops. And I'll just do this again and put new ones in there. So for me, I can see what's inside there. And I think that that's a good thing for me. The other thing that I'm putting in there are chia seeds, these little packages of chia seeds. And each one of them, they have an oxygen absorber in them because that's gonna extend the shelf life, right? And when I open these up in my survival kit, I would be super sad if it was rancid, because of all times that I'm gonna need the food that I have in there to be good, it's if I've had to evacuate and go someplace. So the chia seeds, I wanted in smaller amounts, right? Just because they're little escape artists, and I'm not gonna use that much at a time. What chia seeds do is they have good plant-based protein in them. They'll make you feel full longer, and there's just so many nutrients in them that they're just a basic in my regular life, and so I don't want to not have chia seeds, but I might not have all the ingredients that I normally would have and put in with my chia seeds to make a chia seed pudding or a shake or whatever, but I could just mix these with water and have them still help. They wouldn't taste as good, but they're gonna keep me full and they will provide that protein that I need. And I'm going to do the same thing with the pumpkin seeds because I'm not gonna eat a lot of them at once, right? Not like the nuts where I would be eating a lot more of them. I just want a few. So putting them in these bags, I'll know exactly what's in them. I will label all these and date them, right? Because that's super important. But now they're all sealed. Okay, I'm all finished. It didn't take that long, and yet it's a great way to be able to extend the shelf life a little bit. Now to recap, remember that raw nuts will store much longer, up to 4 times as long as roasted. So if you're gonna want to extend that shelf life, do the raw or the pasteurized nuts and not the roasted. Sometimes the original container just makes sense because nuts and seeds usually come packed in a container that has been flushed with nitrogen. Now, obviously the bulk ones that I bought hadn't been, so you've got to use your best judgment, right? Sometimes it makes sense just to leave it in the original container. Mason jars work wonderfully well. You could also use a plastic peat bottle if you would like to, like a used Powerade or Gatorade bottle to store them with an oxygen absorber. One question that I hear a lot is, do I have to both vacuum seal and use an oxygen absorber? No, absolutely not, you don't. Is there any time when you might want to? Sometimes, maybe with freeze-dried food, but for the most part, it's kind of overkill. Oxygen absorbers actually do a better job than vacuum sealing just because oxygen absorbers will remove all the oxygen, and that is what will degrade the nuts, right? Now, nuts are high in fat, seeds are high in fat, which make them incredibly healthy, but it also reduces the shelf life. So we want to either vacuum seal them or use an oxygen absorber, or both if you really want to, and we want to store them as cool as possible. These are the ones that are going to go into my personal survival kit, because I think it makes the most sense for me and my diet. But these chia seeds, I almost wonder if it would make sense for anybody. And it's just because they're such a good source of nutrients. Protein, right? That is totally shelf stable. You do have to put them in liquid and allow them plenty of time to absorb, right? They absorb that liquid, but they make it so you don't feel full, and they give you the sustained energy that you need. So great survival kit thing. So this is how I store my nuts and seeds. So for the question of the day today, I want to know how you store them to get the longest shelf life. So comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.